Hello, hello. Welcome to Untangling. I'm Ann Weiser Cornell.
I'm Barbara Griffin.
Terrific to welcome you. Come on in and sit down. We look forward to sharing a lot with you this hour about tangles and untangling and all that, how that can help you live more fully.
Yeah, to live your own full life. That's what we're really longing to help you do.
Why don't you introduce yourself by where you're from? Write in the chat, hi, I'm from this state or city or country. There we go. San Jose.
Hoboken, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Wonderful. Sweden. Yay.
Israel.
England.
Yeah, just
wonderful. Hey, going by too fast for us. Argentina, yeah. I saw. Wow. South Africa. Super. Wonderful. Norway. Yay. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Obviously, you do know how to use the chat. That's terrific. So this is Untangling, which is an introduction to the Treasure Maps work that we've been developing together over the past 23 and a half years. You use your you use the chat feature to share your responses and ask questions. Select all panelists and attendees if you want others to be able to see your comments. If you want to speak, you can say so in the chat or raise your hand, but that will come later when we invite participation. And here's something that's our credo, or one of the basic beliefs, values, truths of something we've come to believe from all our years of work. Which is, go ahead and read that, Barbara.
There are no enemies inside. Everything inside, everything that you find wants to save your life.
Yeah.
And that gives huge confidence and courage for me. I've really come to believe that it's really, really important to know that you can be with, face, interact with whatever you can sense inside of yourself.
Yeah. It's very hopeful. It really comes from a sense that, out of our experience, out of the hundreds and hundreds of people we've worked with, starting with ourselves, that what feels worst inside of us can be turned toward and is there for some kind of positive reason, even though it doesn't have to keep doing it. So, we believe that we can give you something today that'll help with something like this. Like, do you ever feel blocked, tied up in knots? Do you feel limited or stuck in your life somewhere? And do you battle with feelings of inadequacy or unworthiness? And do you long for something that seems impossible to fulfill? And we'd like you to sort of be here for this webinar bearing in mind your issues, your issue or issues that are like this. Today we're going to deal with why some life situations are so hard to change. We're going to work with how to begin to develop a new kind of relationship with one of your own tangles. And then finally, how to go forward from here. That's our plan. We're asking, can what feels impossible become possible? And our answer is yes, it can. So I noticed some people have been writing in the chat. Let's see what that is. Oh, you were telling us that the screen has gone black. I'm sorry about that. Hope that didn't happen for everybody. Our story. What happened 23.5 years ago that led to the untangling method as we teach it today? Well, both Barbara and I had been focusing teachers for quite a number of years. And we had started to teach together just a little bit. And around that same time, I realized that I was using alcohol addictively. I was led to realize that by an amazing day in Glastonbury in England. That story is too long for right now, but once I realized that I'd been using alcohol addictively, I felt very ashamed, very stuck, like really fragile, knowing that I had stopped drinking for the moment, but I could feel that the patterns and strategies and feelings that had led me to use alcohol addictively were still there inside me. And what was I going to do? And focusing up till that point, as we knew it then, this was 1994, had not helped. With this, it had helped with many other things, but not with this. Yeah.
It hadn't really significantly shifted.
No.
Yeah.
So I reached out to Barbara and got up the courage to confess to her what had been happening, because it had been a big secret. But then once I did, we began focusing together with this question. Can we find something that would actually help with this kind of tough pattern with so many intertwined emotional tangles involved, including my father had been an alcoholic and so on.
Mm.
And as we began focusing together in every free moment, Barbara started pulling out her notebook after every focusing session to write down not just what we had learned about this particular issue, but what we'd learned in general. And she began bringing her own tough issues. See if it works for that too.
Yeah, it was fascinating. And I spent a lot of my early years, a lot of my childhood, my teens, my early 20s, going in and out of bouts of depression, which were often really deep and difficult. It was very painful life for most of the time. And thing helped a lot. I mean, for the first time in my life, when I discovered focusing, I started to feel like I was in touch with what was real and what was actually happening inside of me, and gave me a way of being able to be with whatever was there. And all of that was great. But there were things that still got stuck, that still were very stuck and like mysterious. I mean, I would still wind up with bouts of feeling overwhelmed by self-criticism. And it was really like how, and I never understood why I just felt so awful, because I didn't really hear a critic attacking me. I just kind of felt really bad, like I was worthless, and it was awful and a mess. So that Anne started to bring, you know, what she was doing, I started to see, oh yeah, actually, that makes sense of some of the things that I've been doing with around feeling so criticized. So that, you know, it was a kind of synchronous thing that was happening with the two of us. you know, she was moving forward with the whole alcoholic thing, and I had a way in with depression, and so that brought further steps forward for both of us.
And although for us this was very personal work, we didn't feel it was ready for prime time. The people in our workshop started asking us questions that we could only answer by beginning to talk from the new learnings we had had. And that got them very, very interested. And within a year, we were teaching workshops based on the new material. So it's been something we've worked out through many, many, many personal explorations, but also through teaching. Teaching is a great way to learn. And by now, we have a system, and we'd like to share with you today some of the foundations and also the first steps of that system, some of the basics of what we've learned, as we would say it today. We have 2 exercises for you today, so we're going to get going with that pretty soon. But first, we're going to talk about this essential concept, which is the concept of a tangle. Let me see if I can, oops. Let me see if I can share my screen without people going blank. Let's try again. So what is a tangle? When something in you has become so stuck that you can't think or act your way out of it, that's what we call a tangle. So a tangle is a life situation that has persisted and maybe persists in many forms, in many areas of your life. You see it as a pattern, and a pattern that feels not just difficult, but impossible to get out of. You've tried a lot of things. It feels impossible. That's what we call a tangle. So the thing is that inside a tangle, your possibilities are limited. So the concept of inside a tangle, when you are inside the world views and the beliefs of the tangle, and when you're identified with one or another of the different parts that are in conflict or struggle with each other in a tangle. And it may feel like you have no possibilities at all. Maybe you've given up on that whole thing ever changing, but it still brings suffering. And when you're in a tangle, inside a tangle, you can't imagine what would bring true relief and living forward. And that's one of the tough things about a tangle. It's like trying to move a rug that you're standing on. But being inside a tangle makes it hard or even impossible to even imagine not having it. So we're going to start today. Our first exercise today is on finding a tangle. What's this? Okay. I was worried that the things going on in the chat meant you couldn't see the screen, but it turns out it was just people saying nice things. Thank you, and yes. All right. But let's do a little process that we're going to take you through that has to do with finding your tangle. And having listened to us so far, you may already have a strong feeling of what in your life is a tangle. Or you may need a little bit of a process to discover one, to get clear on it. And frankly, the very first important step of our work is this identification of a tangle, where where is it? Where in your life? What kind of life situation is a tangle? So we're going to say a little that may help you find your tangle, or if you have one in mind already, this may help you spend a little more time with it. And of course, obviously, from our examples, if you have identified something as an addiction, that's a tangle. If you have identified something as depression, chronic depression, or severe inner critic, that's a tangle. Action blocks are tangles: procrastination, inability to do something that you really need to do if it persists and you've tried not to. But anyway, let's pause a moment and ask you to sense for an area of your life where something is impossible to do. So, is it making time for yourself every day? Just some examples. Is it getting into the studio, right? Getting, of all the things you need to do, your creative project is the one that always misses out. Or speaking up, standing up for yourself. So, where in your life might there be something you really need to do, you want to do, you love to do, but somehow it's impossible?
Or it might just be really difficult. You do it in little fits and starts. Like you get a little bit done, and then it all bogs down again. So that's that kind of territory as well. And especially if it's kind of connected with a sense of, am I good enough, or am I going to be enough, or am I going to be able to, am I the kind of person who can? When they get all kind of mushed up with that, that's a good sign of a kind of change.
We're very funny. We get excited when we're close to something difficult. Yeah, if you work with us very much, you'll learn to do that too. So it's possible to do. Second, or if another place to look in your life is where there's something impossible to believe. So this might be impossible to believe that I'm worthwhile, or impossible to believe that I deserve love, or impossible to believe that I have something worth sharing with others. Well, it's impossible to believe that you long to be able to believe. That would be wonderful if you could believe it, but it feels impossible somehow to believe it, or hard, difficult. Impossible to believe it easily, impossible to believe it with calm confidence. And that's a sign of a tangle. So do make a note. If one of these touches something for you, we're not expecting you to find all of them. We're saying a lot of different things, and one of them will probably hit the mark. Like, oh, that's the one. That's one for me. Yeah. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Barbara. Fourth, we wanted to invite you to sense if there's something impossible to feel.
Yeah, like, is it impossible to feel safe? Is it impossible to feel like you belong? It's impossible to feel exuberant, vital. playful, sexy. Attractive.
Attractive.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to speak up just slightly.
Okay.
Or I'd like you to anyway.
Okay.
Your
Maybe
words
I'll
are
just-
precious to me. Yay. Okay, good. Jillian wrote in the chat, all of them fit her. Oh, yeah, yeah. And they tie together, right? This may be one tangle that has all of these different parts. It's not necessarily different tangles.
We just got an interesting question. Would not feeling grief fit? Grief can be simply an appropriate emotional response to a situation of deep loss.
And so if you know that grief would come ordinarily, but you feel it's impossible to feel the natural grief that would be there, yeah, that is an example of a tangle. Jael writes, it's impossible to feel pretty and comfortable in my body. And Adi writes, impossible to have a relaxed relationship with my mother. Wonderful. Finding these spots.
Perfect.
Great. That's it. That's it. We have one more impossible, and that's an example of it. Impossible to have. What's impossible to have? A relaxed relationship with your mother, or a job in which you feel you like what you're doing and uses your talents, or a life partner where you can show up fully as yourself and there's full room for that other person too. So what's impossible to have? Great. So these are some ideas for how to look for your tangle. We had impossible to do, impossible to believe, impossible to feel, and impossible to have. And these are just evocative, right? These are ways of locating something. If something that you're struggling with doesn't fit, that's okay too. And what else did you notice from this exercise? Does anybody else want to share in the chat what you found? I found it's been going on for a long time. Yeah, that would be quite likely. Emma writes, my sense of self-worth being connected to what others think, what I accomplish, impossible to feel enough just as I am. Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. Feeling shame around what's impossible to do, that would be a sign of really any tangle. There would be shame around it.
Yeah. Every tangle, you'll find shame.
Right. And to have self-confidence, yes. Impossible to get rid of paperwork, yes. Let's take that seriously. Some part of us might think, oh, that's not important. No, that's very serious. If you find that the clutter and the paperwork is in your way, has persistently been in your way, it's a tangle. Impossible to forget a scene I have lived in the past. Yeah, there's a whole thing there, definitely. Hi, Maria. Impossible not to feel sorrow. Oh, yes. Yeah, so there's sorrow there. Each time I want to express myself or take care of myself, something in me becomes confused. Yes. This is very characteristic of a tangle, this confusion, this uncertainty or unclarity about how to even, we can hardly even think when we're inside the tangle. And Sarah writes, tangle as cluster. Yeah. Haja writes, I see how all the tangles are in the same tangle. Yes. Yes. Samara says, I've been working with the tangle for years and it no longer feels impossible. That's great. That's great. Still feels impossible to, something feels impossible to clarify a solution. Well, that's progress though. How many areas of my life my tangle influence? Yes. This is why, you know, Barbara and I are very passionate about helping people with this, because we really want a world in which you are as confident and as effective and living as fully as you really are able to. And it's sad how much tangles cloud us, hold us back. It's really a passion for us to help people shift this. Starts and fits with exercise, feeling badly about myself. Yes, that's definitely a tangle. Yes. Arguments with other family members has cut me off from the grief. Oh, that is hard. Yes. So the question, are tangles connected to one another? Yeah. They're all connected. They're all connected. Yeah. All right.
They're like a great
mesh. And that's good news, because it means that you can start anywhere.
And wherever you start, you'll be able to, when you work on that, you're actually working on everything.
Everything. Like the fingers are all connected to the hand. So the thing about tangles is they're important because a crucial part of your life energy, an unlived life, your unlived life is bound up in the tangle. You need that, and it needs to live. And so when a tangle untangles, you live more fully and freely, and you are more. Okay, now let's take this a little further. And pausing now, just to see if anybody else had a question before we go on. Yeah. Wow. I really appreciate the sharing that people are doing. I feel like I get in my own way. Anybody have a question or a comment before we do another exercise? That's an untangling exercise. Sounds like all the questions are getting to the longing of our soul. Yeah, that's right. You could say that.
What we find underneath the deep longing of all parts of us is really living.
Really living. Did you say living?
Living.
Mm-hmm.
To have a real deep embodied living.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. That's the treasure, our full life. Oh, a question. What if I can't attend all the sessions live? Yeah, all will be recorded. The recordings are posted immediately. Everyone has access to the forum for discussions. The handouts, the exercises are all available. So you really can take it remotely. It's preferable, of course, to be with us live, but it's quite possible to take it remotely. Yes, a sense of aliveness. Self-sabotage is a tangle. Yes, it sure is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And the person called Ann Arbor is trying to raise your hand. Oh, no, I see your hand. I just haven't been noticed. Would you like to talk? Go right ahead. You have to unmute yourself, though. Because I can't. There you go. Go ahead.
Yes, looking over the list of possible tangles, of course, we could say, well, all of them or many of them. I'm wondering if it matters, if it's helpful to define one's tangle more narrowly or more broadly. For instance, I think I would like to address the issue of being more able to do things. But I could pick, that's very broad. I could pick areas of my life. I would like to be able to do more housework, more happily. I have a long-term writing project that I would like to finish. There are all kinds of things. And so I'm wondering if you have any suggestion about narrow or broad definitions of which might be more helpful?
I'm not sure that more helpful. Both. You can go at them. You can have several tangles kind of simultaneously. You're working on simultaneously. So you might find that getting a sense of getting a sense of the whole having difficulty doing stuff. You might get a sense of that and notice if there are particular things that come with that. And then you might also choose a particular, like, I want to get that writing project finished, and see what comes about that. And they might be different, they might be the same, they might overlap. So there's a wealth of possibility and a wealth of treasure that's going to be available wherever you start, basically. I don't know if that helps.
I'm not sure.
Well,
it's still very up in the air, I guess.
You
won't be doing only one focusing process with this tangle. You'll be returning to it over and over. None of this works in just an hour. So one time you'll say, okay, today I'm going to take this as a difficulty in doing things. Let's see what happens when I do that. And the next day you'll say, what feels right today is to really get to the writing project. Let me take that as the issue today. So that's what Barbara means when she says both. It's not both at the same time, but it's moving back and forth in different occasions from one to another. And see which one gets you somewhere.
Okay, thank you both, Anne and Barbara.
All right,
Okay.
Thank you so much. So, and this is a very relevant question for our next exercise, where we're going to ask you to pick a tangle and get to know it a bit better. So, Ann Arbor, for example, would, I'd say, start with, I have difficulty doing things. Let's go broad for the moment. Just an idea, but if you don't feel like that, that's fine. Okay, so let's do a little exercise, and we're going to offer you 6 unfinished sentences, and you would fill in each of them. You can write them down if you like. In fact, I'll show them on the screen, but they're to be asked inwardly. I'm sorry, I need to move this. They're to be asked inwardly, so pause and really let the knowing come. And you don't have to write if writing distracts you. All right, and the first one is, what happens is. So in your tangled area, just tell yourself what happens. What happens is. You might remember the instances, how it plays itself out, if there's a sequence. Like what happens is, in the morning I say that I won't drink today, but then by 5 o'clock I'm in the liquor store. What happens is. And we're not evaluating, we're just describing what happens. But that does include any feelings that come with it. Okay, our second question, or they're really unfinished sentences, we'll call them prompts. The second prompt is, I should or should not. So in other words, where in this area do you find yourself thinking, saying, hearing, I should or should not? I shouldn't be drinking so much. I should be able to relax easily. I should be able to stick to an exercise program. I shouldn't be so ashamed of this. Everything's welcome, right? Where are the shoulds and the should nots? Okay. And you can probably feel that there's even more than what you've discovered. That might be something you could come back to later. Let's do the third one. I like this one. It also connects with. So if you started narrow, right? If you started with just one instance where your tangle appears, this is where the others might come in. It also connects with. And this is not something you need to think about. This doesn't have to come through thinking. Just bring this open-ended invitation down into your body. Say to yourself, it also connects with, and just allow something to pop up that may surprise you. Some of you have already started doing this, as I can tell from the chats. It also connects with self-esteem, or it also connects with how I'm treated in my family. And just whatever comes up is welcome. And see whether that surprises you. Oh, I didn't know it also connected with that. The next one is how it feels in my body. And that might refer to right now, or it might refer to how it usually feels, how you remember it feeling in your body. How it feels in my body is. I'm going to pause for a moment as we go through these prompts and just say, what's also very helpful as we go through these is to remember your own sense of being grounded and solid and centered. You are the compassionate observer right now, something we call self-in-presence. And if you feel a bit fragile or a little shaky, or like you might be getting caught in the emotional states of the tangle, this would be a moment just to pause, find your feet, find your seat, find your breath, and just say to yourself, I am here now. I am the space where all of this can be as it is. And then from that place, you are sensing how it feels in your body. Beautiful. Okay, so the next one, it's a little different. It feels like. And what we mean by it feels like, it's an invitation to a fresh metaphor. It feels like being trapped, or it feels like walking on a shaky rope bridge over the Grand Canyon. So pausing to sense and allow this to come up from inside. What does this whole thing feel like? So what happens is, I should or should not, it also connects with how it feels in my body is, and it feels like, and there's one more. And this one especially, not to come up with the answer in your head, but really just take these words down to your whole body sense and allow something to arise from there. And that is this. It's a whole thing about. It's really a whole thing about. It's really a whole thing about, like I thought it was about, but really it's a whole thing about. And does that surprise you? Is that something you hadn't realized? It's really a whole thing about being myself. It's really a whole thing about whether I have the right to my own space. What, for example, noticing whether that has the quality of being something fresh or new. And if there's a shift when you get here. And when you return to this issue, this could be your starting place. It's a whole thing about. Okay, so we're going to complete this exercise in a minute. You might take that minute just to sense again. It's a whole thing about. Good, so how was that for you? I could tell there were lots of things going on in the chat. Ah, wow. Thank you for people sharing things in the chat about this. Yeah. Wonderful. By the way, some of you are sharing in the chat, but you're not choosing all panelists and attendees. If you just choose all panelists, only me and Barbara can see what you write. And I feel sad about that because I'm enjoying so much what people are writing.
You might want to do.
I feel sad because I love having people read what each other is writing.
And I feel glad that people, if they want to only say to us, then they have that option.
That's true. That's true. Just to know you have that choice. Agnes writes birthing. Oh, hey, that sounds important. Yeah. If you want to share vocally, right? If you want to have your voice heard, just raise your hand or say so in the chat. Feels like I take myself too seriously, and then I get which myself. Like there's a myself that isn't all of you, that's taking itself too seriously. That's interesting. I'm waiting my whole life to find a way out of the tangle. There's so much to do that's not possible from in the tangle. Oh my gosh, yes. I feel for that so much. That's what we love. Yeah. And, you know, this is not a quick fix. We don't know anything that will be an overnight shift. I mean, I hope that even from this exercise, I see from what people are saying, I hope there was some sense of a fresh point of view, a sense of new life, because changes in these areas do come incrementally, right? That means bit by bit.
Yeah. There's little shifts, and then sometimes there's really huge transformational shifts. I mean, that where everything changes. And so much so that often people wind up with amnesia. They actually forget that they had a problem.
But did I have a problem with making decisions? I don't know.
It used to be really difficult for me, isn't it? And it's really quite funny.
Yeah. So it's a whole thing about being unlovable and not wanted at birth. That's a perception I'm carrying in my body. Oh, that sounds like an important thing to really get.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, that is so nice. You know, we've developed a series of steps to the untangling process. This has been the first one, but you can do this one over and over again.
Yeah.
And
this can help, like, starting to, like, instead of it all being like that, you can it starts opening up just a little bit here and a little bit there, and it's a little bit looser.
Yeah. Yeah. Hard to believe it's possible to heal. I know, I hear that. And part of the reason for that is that you're inside the tangle. We can't see our way out. There's no horizon to see beyond. And yet you're here today taking the time to take this webinar because you do have a longing for your fuller life to come forward. You have what it takes to change. You have part of what it takes to change, which is the commitment to yourself, to your healing, to your growth, to your fuller life. We hope we have more of what you have, although we'll see, right? It's all, let's give it a try and find out. It certainly has helped us and a number of other people. I don't believe I found it's a whole thing about so fast. Wonderful. It's a whole thing about the fear of non-existence. Yes. Oh, it could be really big. The questions seem like a way to see that so many of the separate problems are connected. Yes, they are. And that's, I hope, hopeful. Right? This is some whole thing. But we've learned, remember the motto we told you at the very start of the webinar when we said everything inside you is trying to save your life. Even the different parts of the tangle are trying to save your life, but they're tangled. They're missing. They're partial. And so they're missing some of what they would need in order to do what they want to do for you. That's what we discover as we untangling. I found the aching is longing for what I cannot feel. It's a whole thing about maybe I am all the things I was told as a child. Oh, wow. So something in you is worried that those things are true about you. Love the prompts and the reminder to take the words down into the body sense. Thinking about it has always led to endless circling. Yes.
Yes. Oh yeah. God, I remember what a difference that made. When finally I was able to stop circling around. I mean, I could think up a storm. I you know, used to be very, very head oriented, very brainy. And I was so disconnected from my body. And what a difference that made to be able to bring that down in and to sense that.
Up here is like a hamster wheel. And that's torment. And down in the body may not feel that great either. Like it may be pain, heaviness, and yet there's something new possible when we feel the body, when we let these insights and knowings come up from there. And this exercise that we did gave you a chance to feel a bit of that. Yay. Yeah, definitely.
So I just want to say a little something about what we offer. I really want to say that, you know, we have developed over the past 23 years 4 solid, we call them powers. And learning those 4 powers will give you the ability to turn towards all of the scary monsters that you might find inside, and find them revealed as sources of energy, sources of inner caring, sources of power. And that's really important to know that, 1, that there are no enemies inside, and 2, you're going to learn how to transform what seems to be an enemy, help it transform into your deep aliveness and wholeness. So that's what we're offering. And in this first untangling course, we are going to be looking at the first 3 of those, because 5 weeks is not enough time to do all of it but it really needs to be done. But it will give you, even those 3 will give you a huge ability, a huge opening into who you are.
Oh, I hope that even this hour has. So the 5 weeks, that's 10 more hours. It's not everything we could possibly help you with, but it's a very good start. It's what we call an introduction. You'll have a lot from that, of our method. Well, hope you're also interested in our retreats, the 6-day retreats in beautiful parts of the world that are called treasure maps. And yet, what we're very excited about is that this online course called Untangling that will start on March 6th is the essence that will take you really far into our work, even if it's not the whole thing. Do you find, along with the opening up and freshness coming, it can also mean more vulnerability to maybe somebody's rude comment? Well, it can have that effect, but there's something we can do with that as well, right? Your own inner strength grows even as you regain sensitivity that may have been lost because it had to be covered over with a hard shell. You also gain the kind of strength where you can give protective boundaries to your own vulnerability. So that's not something we found that people need to worry about.
Yeah, and it won't hurt more. It may hurt, but that'll be the hurt that belongs there rather than a kind of numbing. So instead of numbing, you might feel it, but you can feel it and move through it and move through it and have it instead of block yourself off from it. And pain, it goes, it comes, it goes. It's not permanent state. There's a part of us that often fears that we will just wind up hurting on and on and on and on and on. But actually, if you feel it and then you go, you're gone. It's done.
A lot of the stuckness of tangles has to do with the fear of different feeling states. And we can turn toward the parts of us that are afraid of allowing us to feel vulnerable or pain or heaviness or anger or et cetera, et cetera. And that can shift as well. All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everybody else. You've been such a great group. We're excited about the possibilities for your lives. I hope it's really helped. Keep in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Hope to see a lot of you in the course.
It'd be great.
Take care. Bye for now.
Bye for now.